You know who joins me now.
Hello,
Florence. So the presidential election in Egypt getting a lot of attention in the international papers today.
It sure is, and we're going to start right off with the international Herald Tribune. Islamists declared winner in Egypt, and there you see supporters of Mohamed Morsi praying in Tahrir Square slightly before the results came out. Now, The Guardian has its editorial dedicated to the election, and it calls it a landmark of victory, and it reminds us that many of the Muslim Brotherhood members spent years in jail, and now their leader has been elected president. It's the first time that an Islamist has been elected head of an Arab state, and so The Guardian calls it a historic moment. It says another nail has been hammered into the coffin of the old regime, and yet it also calls it an ambiguous milestone because power itself has not changed hands. It belongs to what it calls a quote, aging group of generals. And unlike the president, they don't represent the democratic and constitutional will of the people. Now, the editorial does, however, paint a very positive portrait of Morsi. They call him the perhaps accidental president, but says that he could turn out to be a very positive one. Now, it's interesting to note that there's an interesting article in The Independent by their Middle East correspondent, Robert Frisk, who paints a less positive portrait of Morsi. It says that he's no revolutionary, not that much of a nationalist. He doesn't want to live in, quote, a modern, progressive, and secular Egypt. And according to this article by Robert Frisk, the army elite has laid all these traps out for him, grabbing legislative, constitutional, and even executive powers, and they'll try to strip him further of his powers as time goes along.
So a warning there from Robert Frisk. A lot of papers, though, taking a closer look at the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, given those warnings that are coming, and the kind of role that they're playing in Egypt
Absolutely.
today.
Just who are these generals? There's an interesting article in Gulf News that says that, reminds us that they've been either directly or indirectly in power for the last 6 decades, and they're not going to let go of this stranglehold on power quite so easily. And that reminds us that in the last couple of weeks, these groups of generals have taken precautions. It says it's, quote, clipped the wings of any the next president was going to be elected, making sure that the president would be a puppet for them. And according to this article, the generals will continue to call the shots, but this article says that the generals are playing a dangerous game because things have changed, and today this game could have disastrous consequences, not just for Egypt, but for the whole region, because today Egyptians aren't prepared to just stand and stare while their revolution gets stolen. According to this article in Gulf News, the generals could plunge Egypt into endless chaos, and it's time for them to pass the baton onto the elected representatives.
Okay, well, we're going to move on to staying in the Middle East a little bit. The tensions between Syria and Turkey are also getting a lot of attention. And in fact, we can tell you that France has just said that the Syrian downing of that Turkish jet on Friday is, quote, unacceptable. So that diplomatic situation moving on, and a lot of attention internationally as well.
That's right. There's an interesting article in the Sharq al-Awsat, which is a pan-Arab based newspaper based in London, and it takes a closer look at why Turkey hasn't responded militarily, to Syria's provocations. What is preventing Turkey from intervening in Syria? Because it seems that, in terms of military power, Turkey is superior to Syria and could crush Syria if it wanted to. So Sharq al-Awsat takes a look at just what is Turkey afraid of. First of all, it says that Turkey doesn't want to act alone. They wants to be part of an international intervention. Domestically, Turkey fears that if there's a war in Syria, it would open new fronts at home with a Kurdish and Armenian opposition separatist movements. Turkey also fears any kind of terrorist groups that could fill the vacuum, and there fears that if the Syrian regime managed to survive, they could conspire against Turkey later.
Okay, so lots of different factors to take into account. Moving on a little bit, the 2012 Olympic Games in London, just around the corner now, and a surprise move over those from Saudi Arabia. They are going to allow women to compete in the Games.
First time in the country's history, and this comes after the International Olympic Committee was facing all sorts of pressure to ban Saudi Arabia from the Games because Saudi Arabia was going against the Charter's pledge to equality, because you've got to know that the regime severely limits women's ability to undertake a physical activity. For instance, in 2009, they closed private gyms for women. According to critics, they're denying women's rights to sport. Now, this decision was backed by the king, and there should be one female contestant in the horse jumping competition. Her name is Dalma Malis, and she's 18 years old.
Okay, we will look out for her, and hopefully perhaps more Saudi athletes in the years to come. Thanks very much indeed, Florence, for that look at today's international press. Well, let's get a reminder now of our top stories here on France 24.